There we go. All right, let's keep rolling. Welcome, everybody, to another Unauthorized Caucus. It is Thursday. It is noon Central Time, so That's right. Is time for an Unauthorized Caucus. Now, today, of course, we're coming from an undisclosed location.
That's right.
We always talk about when any of our folks are on assignment, and typically that means we're actually not working. But today, on assignment does mean working, just from a different place. But you get to join us from that different place today. So here you are. Here we are. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I'll go ahead. We're going to dive into a couple of hot button topics today. Last week, we had a fun discussion, I would say. So we've got a couple others lined up. But first, like, share, and subscribe. If you're on Twitter, hit the retweet button. Facebook, hit the share. Send it to a friend or family member. Make sure on YouTube you hit the big red button and the little notification bell. Turn it on and help us beat the big tech algorithms. But we need you to be a part of this. And more than just the digital side and sharing it, like we say every time, this is the conversation that we kind of have along the halls of Teen Eagles and Eagle Forum, Education and Legal Defense Fund there in Clayton, Phyllis Schlafly Eagles. This is the kind of stuff that conservatives need to be talking about. Like we did last week, we don't always agree, but it can be civil, and we need to have those discussions out now, because in a bigger way, we need to go and be unified against the left as that bigger battle comes. So in light of that, let's dive into it today. First of all, quick hit. We talked about Donald Trump last week. We might as well talk about him this week and every week moving forward. There's a lesser known guy. People know his hair more than they know him, really. The hair makes appearances on all kinds of frogs and eagles and some fringy stuff on the internet. But Donald Trump made an interesting tweet over the weekend. Andrew, did I hear it correctly? Did he suggest terminating the U.S. Constitution? That's what the news tells me.
Yeah, well, that's what Breitbart said. That's how I was actually sitting in my family living room, and my dad read me the headline from Breitbart that said Trump suggests termination of U.S. Constitution allowable over 2020 Twitter scandal. And I was like, wow, that's big if true.
Yeah.
So I went to the man himself, as it's always good to do, instead of hearing what somebody says about what somebody supposedly said, to go and read the truth. So I went and read the truth, and I'll just read the latter part of it. He said a massive fraud, talking about the 2020 election, of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. So my first thought upon reading that was, he's not calling for the eradication or termination, as Breitbart dubbed it, of the Constitution. He's saying, if we can get away with this, the left, if they can get away with this, then subsequently this allows for the termination of all sort of constitutional thought and basis for elections. That's what I got out of it.
Oh yeah, and that was, and I had a good, I'm going to put this in the comments as we're rolling along here, but I actually had a good conversation with Ed Martin, our president, on the Pro America Report on his radio program, and we talked about this, and I said, this is a whole conversation that needs to be had, because one thing that he has said that I've really liked over the last couple of years, he has referred to this as being our 1776 moment, the modern conservative movement, the modern Americans' 1776 moment. And the spirit of 76, when you look at that, there are years of, and I mean, we don't have to, I know you and I could both just get lost in the history of it, but there are years of actions and reactions and all the things that made the colonists pleaded with the crown, give us these rights, treat us as British citizens. There were diplomatic solutions. They worked inside the system. And only at the very end of many, many, many years of options and different things to try, did they finally just, we're done. We're done. Something big is about to happen. We're kind of in that moment now where the very system itself is being turned against us, is being used against us by powerful people. So we have to have the conversation at least now. Okay, what do we do about this? Because if they're literally using the system to cheat and browbeat people into their will, not the will of the people, we got to have an honest conversation about that. And that means examining the system itself. And honestly, that's what Donald Trump is very good at doing. Dropping a tweet, or a truth social in this case, dropping a truth, and then letting everyone go wild. But as much as it'll set the left's hair on fire and distract CNN for a few more news cycles, which is a good thing, give them something to do. I know they've been very bored since he left office. It's truly sad. I feel for them. But it gives us the opportunity to say, you know what? He's not calling for the disbanding of the Constitution, but he's right. Our founders would not tolerate this. What are we going to do? If it's literally a fraudulent election, what do we do? Like, what possibilities do we have to look at that point? So I think that that's a really good conversation piece that he's giving us. The system really is being turned against us. Now, whether you think the 2020 election was stolen all the way away from him and he's the rightful president or not, et cetera, and so on. I mean, you could take that any different direction or any different, not any different. You could take that any distance down that thought you wanted to and stop at a certain point. The conversation is still there to be had. Let's all recognize they're doing this. And it is going to become more effective and more prolific. And we're going to have to figure out how to suspend that activity using our very system against us. That's a big deal. And this is also, I mean, this is in the, not to get too far off, but this is in the Supreme Court this week. I'll put another link down. They're talking about the court is considering in Moore v. Harper, the North Carolina redistricting maps. But at core, does the text of the Constitution mean what it says? When it says state legislatures with this authority, et cetera, and so on, or can state courts do it, blah, blah, blah. They are using the system against us. And you could say perverting the system. We have to address that and figure out what to do. And that might mean some uncomfortable things. And no, I'm not saying we need to overturn the Constitution, have civil war. That's, of course, what the left immediately accuses you of. But we have to have some honest conversations about this stuff. And that's what Trump's given us the opportunity to do.
Yeah. And in summation, I think really the big point of this is if the rules exist and it's laid out in the Constitution and the founders had an original vision and original intention, which, by the way, they did, and that is just decorum at this point, and the system, like you said, is going to do what the system does, and the elites are going to do what the elites are going to do, then it's nothing more than decorum. And if we continually allow this to happen, then what's going to stop them from terminating it? And that makes complete and perfect sense. And you made this point on the Pro-America report, Ryan, that Trump has a history of, when it comes to business and when it comes to politics, of making a huge statement way above, kind of the normal conversational tone. And it's to bring people to that level of discourse. Maybe you want $20 million, so you ask for 40, and you make, then your request for 20,000 or 20 million is not going to be that bad. So making a statement like this, though crazy, the news says it's crazy. Once you look into it, it's like, you know what? That's actually not too far off base. And it starts the conversation. That's what Trump's good at doing. He's good at putting his agenda into the news cycle.
And there's a tidbit. If you want to know, like we're talking about this like we know him. We don't know Donald Trump, but personally, but he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. And really, if you read the book, you look at it and go, oh my gosh, he really does that. Like that is kind of how he operates. So it'll give you a little bit of a window because I think there's a lot more to it than a lot of people would like to think. It's just interesting. So yes, let's be abundantly clear. Breitbart got it wrong, and so did many others who repeated just an absolutely dumb thing to repeat, that Donald Trump said to overturn the Constitution. He didn't. But what he did give us is the clearance to start having this conversation in a more full-throated way. Hey guys, they're using the system against us. We're going to have to figure out what to do about that. That's a big deal. So speaking of using the system against us, though, we had another topic that I know the door of it gets knocked on all the time, but it's kind of time to dive into it a little bit here. And we're probably gonna have to cut this off before we'd like to, although we do have a few minutes left to cover this. Why don't you introduce? This was your idea, and I think it's good to talk about. So introduce us, tee it up for us.
ESG. Who's heard of ESG? So it's environmental social governance. That's the acronym, because every sort of woke environmental moralist argument needs a catchy, well-to-do acronym. In my opinion, humble opinion, I think ESG is probably, as an action item, one of the single most dangerous threats to free peoples. And really what ESG is it's a social credit score. I'm sure if you keep track of the news and the current happenings, you've heard of that before, that buzz term, social credit score. And essentially the idea is we're going to measure how much energy you use and consume, and we are going to regulate your social credit. So maybe you travel too much, Ryan, and you go to DC, or you go and visit your aunt in wherever she lives or whatever it may be, and we think you're using up too much and you're being too greedy. So we're going to assign a credit score to you. And it's just like how credit works financially, right? You don't have a good credit score, so thus we're going to shorten your leash of what your line of credit is. Same is true with social credit score, where you're driving too much. We don't like that diesel truck you have. We don't like how much you go and visit Auntie in Nevada or whatever it may be.
Auntie. So I'm a Midwesterner. There's no Auntie here. Come on, man.
You're going to be limited. And Jordan Peterson made this great point of, in international airports, which I don't go to very often, especially any airport outside of the United States, but they have automated checkpoints and automated boundaries where you scan your passport. Well, if an ESG score is implemented, which it already is being implemented, you listen to this COP27 climate conference that's going on in Egypt, and these people are getting together and talking about, they created, it's an interesting, New American has an article out about it, they created an environmentalist 10 commandments. And, it really plays into the ESG
Alex,
mindset.
You all know Alex Newman. He's a good friend of ours, right? Writes for the New American. I assume he almost runs the New American, I would say.
His editor,
We love Alex.
Yeah.
But Alex was actually there and has some wild stories. I know we're actually due to have him on the Pro America Report again.
Yeah.
And we should do that because he had I was on a phone call with him last week and it was nuts.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that's going on, it was bonkers. Like they replicated the 10. It's weird. It's some weirdo stuff.
But you even see stuff going down to the local level, like Ameren, for example, in St. Louis. Ameren's now rolling out this thing where they want to do these smart meters on your house where they can see how much energy you use wirelessly.
Turn it off when you've reached your limit.
Yeah, turn it off when you reach your limit. So,
and can I put a plug momentarily here? Can we talk about this? First of all, you'll hear, and I'm sorry, don't lose your train of thought.
We're good.
Lock it down. First of all, you'll hear you want to talk about social credit scores. Phyllis Schlafly Eagles has been one of the #1 places talking about that for decades now. Phyllis talked about the Dangans, the actual physical manila file that was kept on every Chinese citizen, and how that transformation into the digital age has just been absolutely incredible. China has a market on the digital surveillance state and everything going into a physical, into a digital passport in your phone. They know what you're doing, where you go for lunch, what you ate, who you ate with, what you talked about. Everything is put into your file, essentially, so that they know whether you've been a good little citizen or not. That kind of thing, you will find no more comprehensive history of it. But how it is transferring into our world here, again, you're going to find sources like Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, the New American, are going to be talking about this, unlike a lot of other even conservative media places have put it together. And that's actually, there was something else I was going to say that I wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
But we'll keep going because I've got, did you send it to me?
Yeah, I sent
good.
Climate 10 Commandments.
That's what I was looking for. The Climate 10 Commandments. I'll post that up there. Anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
Well,
I wanted to point that out.
But really, and to build off of, I'm really going off of some of the things I've read from Alex and other things, this is the perfect doorway into globalism. Because what's one thing every single person has in common on the whole world? They live in the world. So you can use the climate change argument.
That was really complicated. Would you run by me again? No,
yeah, everyone lives in the world. So climate change and environmental issues is the perfect vessel for globalism.
Yeah.
Because, hey, you're a part of the problem. We're all a part of the problem. We need to take care of each other. Social credit score. And that is such a perfect globalistic thing, because if each country has their own credit score, how's that going to work in a globalist united front against climate change? It's the perfect opportunity. So we really don't know how cooked we really are, because I mean, this is a horrible idea if it gets implemented, where you're only going to be able to travel this much. You're only going to be able to consume this much. Hey, your house is using too much electricity. You're flying too much. You're driving too much. You aren't woke enough. I mean, it can become something very similar to China, where the slippery slope's real. It's not just going to be CO2 and carbon and petroleum based. It's going to then leak into, you're not inclusive enough, or you work for a company that has racist opinions, or whatever it may be, and they're going to limit us socially from some sort of moralist perspective. It's, in my opinion, the single biggest threat. And the solution's simple. It's for everyone to just stand up and say, heck no.
Yeah,
there's not really anything you have to do legislatively to fight it. It's just people saying no. Pulling out of the UN would be great, but just saying no.
And see, that I was going to say, that was the evidence of this. And this was one of my other, that's why I realized what I was going to couple into it. If you look back at the history of what Phyllis Schlafly talked about, this is where you can start to identify organizations to follow on these things, because a lot of the stuff is not being talked about like it ought to be. It's not being put front and center. But one interesting thing is the smart meters. If you go back, there were several groups that got pushed off as fringe, including ours, 20 years ago, talking about smart meters. And everyone, oh my goodness, y'all are nuts about the smart meters. This is just a way it's like eco mode on your, appliances. No, the smart meters are a method of control, and we were pigeonholed into being weirdos. Well, guess what? There are massive protests happening across different areas of California now, because as the California Public Utilities Commission has put smart meters in, those smart meters don't just monitor and help regulate everything. We're using too much power, so we're going to black out this area. And all of a sudden, your AC at home gets turned off in the middle of the summer, starting at 7 or 8 p.m. or whatever it is. And Santa Barbara, some of the bluest of the believers, liberal areas, are now having protests against smart meters because they have allowed into their home. Sure, we'll do that because it's environmentally friendly. Well, you've literally given them a way to just turn off. You're using too much energy. We're going to turn it off. We're not crazy. Like this stuff, some people have cast a vision for how bad this stuff could be, what doors this could open. So now that we're talking about not just the environmental side of it, but all the other stuff, especially when it comes to banking and well, the vaccine passport plays into this, all the different things, whether it's health records, whether it's, banking, whether it's environmental footprint, all of these things being pulled into some of these digital, whatever the ESG, the, governance ratings that they give. Like, this is some bad news, and it's not just theoretical anymore. You're watching how some of this stuff is playing out as really bad news for people who wanted it because they didn't see what was coming.
And this isn't just a headline. Ameren, like, for example, talking about these meters, has literally knocked on the door of my house and has asked, and they say, if you don't, there's like a monthly penalty. And I think it's in the ballpark of $100 a month if you don't get this meter. So they really want you to get the meter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's disguised under the kind of ethos of, well, we're saving energy and we're saving green. And that's kind of, you see this with washing machines too. You go out and buy washing machines, they use less water and it's all regulated. And, you hit the button and the door locks on the washing machine. I mean, it really is all in the name of saving the energy and saving the planet, but you're relinquishing control and sovereignty of your own life to the powers that be.
And see, one of the interesting things, and I know you brought this up, and I'll bring this in because we don't want to go too terribly long, but one of the interesting things that comes into this is, like he just said, Ameren really in this area, they're starting to have a heavy push. They want you to get a smart meter. Well, why is that? Does Ameren care? Is Ameren the big government boogeyman? No. Someone is pressuring Ameren.
Right.
The regulatory industry, not industry, I should say, the regulatory bureaucratic overlords in DC are demanding that companies do certain things. We are giving out privileges to those who are good little climate people, and then we're holding the stick instead of the carrot over those who aren't getting on board with the program.
Follow the money.
Exactly, and that's the thing. It's being forced down the line. They don't have to actually regulate it into existence by law. We're going to pass a law. Congress says that everyone has to have a smart meter so that the government can decide to tell utilities to turn off. No. We're going to use places like the EPA and the Department of Energy to browbeat the companies into it. The companies are then going to push you into it. This is how it gets pushed on down the line. And they say, oh, we didn't pass a law for smart meters. Really? That's funny. Because the EPA brought them to town and beat my utility company with a stick until they made me get one. They gave them no choice. The regulatory burdens that are coming down on these on big businesses, and also the undue rewards that are coming to others who are socially good according to the standards of places like the World Economic Forum. This is something that Elon Musk and some others started knocking on the door of when he was like, hey, did we look at these ESG scores from the World Economic Forum? Can you talk about how ridiculous it is? What countries are getting high scores and other ones aren't? The fact that Tesla, now that I'm getting all political, is being poo-pooed everywhere, and these other companies that aren't doing squat for the environment are getting high ratings. It's not about the environment. It is about who plays nice with their agenda. So I'm doing great things for the environment with Tesla, but I don't get a high score. Why? Because I'm not playing nice with the agenda. And I mean, this isn't, like we've talked about before, this isn't some shining endorsement of Elon Musk as a conservative, but he's starting to pull it back. And some of the Twitter files dumps, you're starting to see this like, oh, this isn't just environmental. This isn't just bureaucratic. Now there's some social stuff involved. Now there's this and that and the other. There are incredible snaking, winding ways that this is coming in here, where the government's not necessarily, well, we could go back and talk about the PRISM, and Snowden and everything that got the lid blown off, but they may not necessarily be keeping a file on you in the same way, but they're moving people toward these weird systems of social control in ways that we have to be mindful of, whether it's the Environmental, Protection Agency that's coming for your utility company and smart meters, whether it's businesses, they're making sure they put certain people into business and certain people out of. Solyndra comes to mind, but we don't even have to go down that. There's so many rabbit trails because it's all connected. And it's a big deal when you find someone like an Elon Musk who's willing to at least say it out loud to then follow that person, because the scurrying that will happen when they flip on a light bulb and everyone runs for the corners, that you want to see who it is, who is involved in this, and who's mad, who's not mad, who's trying to get him to shut up, because it becomes very, very revealing very quickly. And this is one of the things that we've talked about, a lot of offshoots of it, but some of these things are starting to come to bear now in a really big and very dangerous way.
And let's end this ESG discussion with a positive note. New American dropped this, and you can put this one in the chat, that Florida, the CFO of Florida, Jimmy Patronis, he pulled $2 billion in investments from BlackRock, which is an investment company and an investment conglomerate that was doing heavy ESG type tactics. So Jimmy Patronis pulled it and he tweeted, using Florida's cash to fund BlackRock's social engineering project isn't something we signed up for. It's got nothing to do with maximizing returns, which should be the whole point of investing, right? Is maximizing returns, not pushing some sort of woke environmentalist, moralist propaganda idea. And he said, this is the opposite of what an asset manager is paid to do. We are divesting from BlackRock. So good news coming from the state of Florida once again, but this is really what is necessary. People just saying, hey, go woke, get broke.
Yeah.
See ya. And putting our money elsewhere. It really just takes people saying, no. Yeah, no.
And see, that's the thing is it's more than just people. It's going to take state and well, it's going to take state and federal government leaders saying no to divest from the system.
Yeah.
Because you know, this is, I love, we talk about, I'm a big fan of conspiracy theories, but only the real ones,
Right.
only the ones that are true. But you start talking about it, like there's some of the, out of the whole world of crazy stuff that's written that sounds like a spy novel.
Right.
You want to have fun. And this is, we don't even really have time to get into this. So I'm just going to drop this little nugget and we can move on for the day. But Blackstone and BlackRock, you want to talk about, so look at the Blackstone Group and BlackRock. And honestly, another great source for this, I shout him out all the time. Jack Posobiec talks about Blackstone and BlackRock, unlike other people. And he does, unlike the amount that other people do. And he always comes with some serious ties and connections and facts and figures and statistics that actually prove what's going on here. Shout out Jack Posobiec. Feel free to retweet anytime. Like I've offered several times before. We just want to help you boost your profile.
Exactly. Help us help you.
Help us help you. There you go. So, but Blackstone, BlackRock, you want to have some fun. Start Googling along inside of some of the good sources like the Post Millennial, Human Events Daily, Breitbart, and look at Blackstone and BlackRock, and you'll find out what it is. These are giant financial institutions that are essentially the bank of the World Economic Forum and of all of these massive control-driven, social-driven, environmental-driven groups and organizations that are just weaving in and out of governments willy-nilly without care for national sovereignty. And if you look at it, there are so many of our American state and federal assets that are tied in with this, even if it's not necessarily directly a part of the WEF or something like that.
Yeah.
We are advancing, helping to financially advance by giving them our money kind of thing to invest. So to see states go, wait a minute. No, we're going to pull our money out of this. That's a big step that needs to happen. And it's one of those weird, shadowy, has been a conspiracy, but it's not anymore things that the light's being shed on it. That's something very interesting to look at. So if you take one thing away that's your homework, go and Google Blackstone and BlackRock. And obviously, if someone says this doesn't exist, it's a conspiracy theory, move on from that website because those people are lying to you.
Yeah.
But go look because this is really, there are some major connections. And to your point, this is the way to fight it. We have become entangled via finance.
Right.
And we need to unentangle ourselves via disinvestment, get your money out. And then of course, you know, like we just referenced, our own regulatory agencies are doing their own little thing, which that's not just simply a matter of finance. That's a matter of someone firing a few entire federal agencies. Hint, hint, whoever wins in 2024 for the Republicans, don't just sweep up a little bit, just, you know, demolish a few rooms for us and get rid of those departments. But yeah, there's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
But this is starting to come back into the news very heavily. And from little things all the way like the smart meter attached to your home, all the way up to giant big things that feel so far above us, like Blackstone, BlackRock, state investments of billions and trillions of dollars. These are massive things that are happening that all are related to an erosion of our national sovereignty.
That's right.
Which is why, you hear us talk about all this stuff. We could go off into offshoots all the time, but at the core of it, the conservative principle to be upheld, what is national sovereignty? Why does it matter? And how do we uphold it? That is the value that we're talking about. And then we're going to go off and talk about smart meters and BlackRock and the World Economic Forum.
Right.
But at the core is national sovereignty. And as conservatives, it's important to know not just who's fighting against our American national sovereignty, but why that matters in and of itself, why the founders knew it was so important, how we were set up to protect our national sovereignty. That's a big thing. And that's important to find. So there are a lot of good groups. The New American writes about it a lot. You're always going to see that stuff coming from Phyllis Schlafly. We won't just be warning you about things that are attacking, and some of the details and getting off into the weeds, but the principles themselves, national sovereignty and why it matters, that's the core underneath all of this. So
that's right.
There's a couple pieces of homework. Go read about national sovereignty and go look up Blackstone, BlackRock, and have have a good old time on the internet. That's going to lead you down some very interesting places. But
Yeah.
a lot of it's going to be very true, even if it seems, well, especially if it seems scary. That's probably the stuff that's actually arguably the truest. So
that's right.
That's that. Yep. Love Poso. There's people down here. See, Jack, your fans are here, man. You got to come and retweet us.
It's a honey hole, Jack.
It is. It is. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Andrew, for coming on again in our undisclosed remote location today and talking about some less than fun stuff. But there's a lot out there. So let this be a good conversation that spins off yours. Please go and look it up, be informed. And then come back, hit us up, info@phyllisschlafly.com if you have any specific questions. And then again, we're coming up to the holidays, so it's always a good time to go and Google the conspiracy theories, find the real ones, bring them up with your friends and family at the dinner table.
That's right.
It's very advisable.
Right.
As long as you're cool and calm about it. It's just, leave that there and then just see what happens.
Yeah.
So
drop the bomb, let the silence sit.
Just walk away.
Just
walk away. That reminds me, I'll have to share the meme. I saw the meme of someone dropping pull the pin from the grenade, throw it in the room and walk away. And it says, me at the family dinner table. Did you hear about, so what do you think about all those Trump prophecies?
That's right. That's right. And in the 1940s, there were uncles and grandpas that were like, I don't think the president can walk.
That's
I don't
right.
think FDR can
That's
walk.
right.
And they're like, you're
that
crazy.
Crazy uncle who said
crazy.
that federal, FDR couldn't walk. You got to go back and find that guy's son and be like, what do you think? You need to tell me everything that you're thinking because your dad was right.
This has been going on forever. Yeah,
it has. It's true.
Right.
They're always cover-ups. Like I said, we love the conspiracy theories, just the true ones. The conspiracy theories, just the true ones. So thank you for joining us. Thanks for being with us. We'll look forward to seeing you again next Thursday for another very unauthorized caucus in a different location. We'll just start hopping around and see if everyone can start guessing. We'll hit landmarks in the background.
Yeah, live from Amron's basement next week.
Oh, we're going to go outside. That's a good, we should just put a smart meter in the back. So did you guys get one?
No.
Oh, well, that's too bad. We could have set up outside the back of your house and had the smart meter behind. We'll
the unauthorized meter. It'll be spinning very quickly.
It's the unauthorized meter. All right. Thanks, everyone.